can find Adobe Creative Cloud by going to the Heathcote Gateway and clicking on your particular grade level. For this example, we'll use grade 3. You notice Adobe Creative Cloud is right here with specific directions for logging in. For this one, we're not using Google, we're using our school account. So I click on the link, opens up Adobe in a new tab. I have a sign in button up here in the top right, click sign in. This is where we are not using Google, but rather right here you have I'm a teacher, I'm a student. Obviously teachers will click I'm a teacher, students will click I'm a student. All the accounts are preloaded. So I click for me, I'm a teacher. I already have access. Even if you've never used Adobe before, as long as you are a scarsdaleschools.org user, you already have access. We have linked the accounts. So you will click sign in with school email. When this comes up, you enter your full and complete Scarsdale email address, including the @scarsdaleschools.org. Press continue. When it loads, it will redirect you to a Scarsdale Schools Azure login screen, such as this. Enter your email and password, click sign in. Once you're on your dashboard, you have a number of different options. Poster, learning journal, different things like that, flyer. They all are essentially the same. They can create graphics. You can also do things like videos, and I have a different tutorial on how to create an Adobe video. Right now we're going to focus on sort of the poster visual, whether it be an infographic, a meme, a piece of art, poetry and art, something of that nature. So you can choose one of these. You can also come up here to the top left where there's a plus, and you can click the plus button. It will allow you to create different things. There's some quick actions to work with photos. If you wanted something very specific, you would choose custom size graphic. And if I choose that, that will then allow me to decide whether I want to use a custom height by pixel or by inch, or I can go to, let's say, social media post, and then I can actually choose a very specific type of layout or sizing based on where I want it to go. So if I wanted it to be an Instagram post, I would choose this, and that is the size of an Instagram post. Similarly with prints, I have different letters, sizes. A4 is a particular style of paper. Letters, your standard 8.5 by 11. There's a social profiler, things like banner and cover art for things like YouTube channel art. So they give you the very specific ones. Standard is sort of your generic uses, right? So portrait is 2:3, meaning that the small side is to a 2:3 ratio to the tall side. Solid square, 1:1, landscape, it just kind of gives you the basics. For the purposes of this post, I'm going to use, let's say, popular. And let's say I choose, social post. And let's go Instagram. And I'll click next. It's going to open up, and it's going to give me my blank palette. Now, over here on my blank palette, I can choose, and again, I have these different elements that I can click on. I can rotate, and those red lines are kind of giving me an orientation based on the other ones. So as I rotate it, that's centered. We'll go this way. It's going to line up with some of those other shamrocks. You can see the little red lines, letting you know the angle is the same as some of the other ones. It's a way to be consistent or have sort of a theme, a visual theme throughout your work. Same thing with this. I could take the corners. I can resize the text if I wanted to, make the text larger. Over here on the right-hand side is where I would edit the text. And I just do, Happy Friday, change the font size, change the style of font, put it in the center if that mattered, drop shadows, things like that. Right down here, it's letting me know that it's using the circle one. Now, let's say I want something completely blank. I'm just going to start. So if I want to delete the entire thing, I sort of first have to understand how Adobe is structuring all this. It's structuring it just like Google would with layers. So over here in the bottom right, you see that there's multiple layers. And if I click on this, it's essentially each item is its own layer, and they're stacked. So one is behind the other. Even if they're not visually behind each other, they are layered, much like Google Slides does arrange with the order send to back. So what I can do is I can click on one and I can delete it, and then one of the shamrocks gets deleted. This layer has a different shamrock. I can click it. You notice this one over here. The layers can also move around. So I can pick something up and I can move it, and what that does is it replaces it in the order, meaning something else may go behind it based on the order, or something else may go behind that. You notice is behind both of those shamrocks. So depending on the order, depends on where we are. So this particular shamrock is on top of, you notice I'm covering the word face because I can see that this shamrock is on top of this, which is why if I make that bigger, it's covering the what's on with the face painting. It's not going to cover town square because that's further up here. If I click on the town square, you can see that's further at the top. That's why that's not getting covered. So all of these work sort of as a stacked layer, but it's nice because this is how you move them around. You just pick them up and drag it. So now if I move this all the way up to the top, it is now going to appear on top of the shamrocks because I've moved the layers. And I can close those out so I don't actually see them. I just know that there's a stack of layers right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at a template, and I can decide on a template, or I can just go and delete all of my layers. And I can also then choose these solid colors for things like the borders, backgrounds, things of that nature. So I'm going to start with a white background. I'm going to make something new. What I can do is, let's say I want to put in a photo, and I'm going to put in a photo of school. And the hallway looks like a good photo. So I put the photo in there, click on the photo, I can rotate it. That little red line lets me know it's in the center. I can take the corners and I can stretch it out. Obviously, it's not going to fit perfectly, so I can go outside the lines to make it actually fit the page or the palette, the template. And then I can adjust it and I can move it in. Now that line going across lets me know it's centered, and then I can keep bringing this in until I get the crosshair, which means that that is centered rows vertically and horizontally. So that's my background. Now what I can also do is I can put in a shape. And maybe I just want to drop a square in because this is going to be eventually where I put my text. Because again, I'm layering it over here. So I see that I have my background at the bottom, I have my picture, then I have this block of color. Now I can drop in some text, choose from some of these sort of preset ones, or basically like stickers or stamps essentially, where it'll drop it in and it becomes this movable element where you can then, change the background, change certain things. But what I like to do, make sure before you delete something, you're clicked on the right one. What I like to do is just add some texts. So it'll say double click to edit. You notice right over here in the top right, you could add your text. So let's say I'm writing a poem. I can write the words my poem. I can then take this and move this onto that box. Now I'm lined up in the center. If I don't like how big that is, I can just come over here. Right now it's 75.8. I can drop it to 60. I can drop it to 24. Change it if I want it to be on one line. I take those little middle boxes and I spread it out. I can then readjust, put it back where it needs to be. I'm going to add a separate text box for my actual poem. Not the greatest poem of all time, but there it is. Now, yes, it's covering the whole slide because, again, all I have to do is drop it from 75.1 to, let's say, 24. Bring it down here, take those middles and just stretch those out so that way I'm getting the word wrap to be the way I want it to be. And I'm going to center it. Now, the reason why I use two text boxes is because now if I wanted to, I can have that aligned to the left, whereas my title can be aligned center. I can also do this because let's say I want this font to be something different than this font. That's why I choose to do the two different text boxes, because then I can manipulate them separately. And you do not need to do a picture as a background. You can do a shape as a background. You can do things like design assets, which can be anything from just some texture. That puts a little bit of a textured, semi-transparent, almost like piece of parchment paper on it. And I can give some texture to that if I wanted to have it sort of have a look or a feel of something maybe a little bit older. Now again, now I'm looking through that to see my poem. So all I have to do is I take that parchment paper, which is now on the top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it a few levels here on the right. I'm going to go behind the text, behind the shape, but above the hallway. And when it drops it there, now I can still see my poem. That's the most important thing I want to see. But then I have this kind of feature or element or effect happening behind it. You can also do things like illustrations. They have tons of built-in illustrations, so you definitely could find something that goes with your poem theme, with the infographic you're trying to make, with the meme you're trying to create, the message you're trying to send, whatever it may be. There are tons of design elements, textures, film strips. If you click more, you'll see more just in that texture. Go back to design assets. You want to see more illustrations. You click more. You will see more things in illustrations. Go back to design assets, so on and so forth. Same thing with shapes. You can look at shapes, different kinds, emoji style shapes, basic shapes, tons of free, fair use, Creative Commons allowed stock images. Right here, based on a lot of different things, there's 17,000 images for schools. You could find pretty much anything in there. Shark, 766 results for sharks. Toy, 4,000 images that are for toys. So there are a lot of design elements in there. Photos, backgrounds, shapes, textures. Here are the backgrounds. And those would just work as literally in the background. Now I put that there, you don't see it because I have the hallway is above it. If I were to drop the hallway below it, which I can't do because the hallway is not a background. So you know that this is the background because it has that little icon right there. So if I don't want that to be the background, I have to click on it and I have to trash that as the background. That then basically just makes a solid color background. In this case, that's black. Meaning if I click on my picture and I drag my picture lower, you'll see that I have a black background. So again, you have to understand how these are layered and how these are structured and that you can move these around. If I want the sun illustration further back, I can drop that back here. And then what that's going to do is that's going to then take these, if I moved it up, and put it on top of the sun as opposed to the sun being on top of it. Where that would be most notable is if I dropped it below that sort of parchment paper. Now you see it kind of dipped behind it. So it's working within those. So essentially it's as simple as choosing a style or a size, working with either templates or a blank, adding text. You can just add basic text. And when you add your basic text, you have fonts, sizes, alignment, different shadows, shapes. They give you some recommendations on how you can tweak it or adjust it based on what they think is best. You could use some of their sort of custom design ones that you can edit the text of. You can edit the look, the feel. Tons of stock photos for you to add. Shapes of various sizes, designs, styles. You can change the colors of these, just like I changed the color of that shape. Textures, brushes, frames, images, illustrations, different types of backgrounds, lots of different things. Those are the key elements. And when you put them in, you will always put in from the left and then edit the particular element on the right. You want to choose a different element to edit. I just clicked on that background. I clicked on that layer that's just that shape. I can change the color of the shape, give it a shadow, do other things with it. Essentially, you can add anything from the left and customize it on the right based on a project's requirements. Once you're done, you can download it. Download as a PNG, JPEG, any standard format. It will drop it into your downloads folder. And that is the basics of creating something visual with Adobe Creative Cloud Express. Thank you.